Welcome, adventurers! I am Goose,
I'm Turnip.
and just gonna leave me like that.
Why don't you just focus on your video like you want to do?
I can't do it. I'm supposed to talk about the High Elves because you guys wanted to learn more about the High Elves of Dadoran, so I'm here to talk about the High Elves of Dadoran. I'm gonna go over all three of the main sub-races of elves that are present on Dadoran, starting with the High Elves, and I'll do 2 other videos about those. But this one's about the High Elves. So, as they start, physically, they're a lot like humans except pointy ears. No clue why the ears are pointy. I don't know what that is for, but their ears are pointy. High elves specifically have very pale or white or fair skin. It's on the lighter end and tends not to get very dark. They don't tan very easily. They tend to have lighter colored hair, but there are dark-haired high elves, and their eyes are almost always blues, greens, or reds. Very rarely do they drift into the brown or the black. As said, their skin glows, and the conditions for this are anything and everything. They always glow. Their skin is always glowing, and it gets brighter when they're emotionally stressed or excited. This is a result of them being very entwined magically. They have a lot more potential to build up mana in their bodies through digesting food, which is then stored around their bodies as mana to use in magic. And when it builds up too heavily for their bodies to store, it's just emitted as light. And that is also the reason that high elves specifically, and elves as a whole, don't gain much fat mass, is because they are actually burning off food energy as light energy all the time. High elves always glow. They have methods for mitigating this or reducing it, but they can never stop glowing entirely. They can use spells to make it so other people can't see them glow, but with immense focus and training, they can make their glow lessen, but never negate it completely. They are always emitting light. Besides that, high elves tend to be fairly chipper and very happy and outgoing. They're very smiley. And this is more based on their society, which is based around pleasure and happiness. High Elf society began when the god of High Elves set them down on Dadoran, and his chosen son, who is their king, made the mandate that their job on Dadoran is to make every other race and themselves happy and pleasured and bring joy to the experience of life. And it's been that way since the beginning of time, even after the great cataclysm of the High Elves. But we get into that into the books and not here. How society was built around being happy. In the beginning, there was no money, there was no currency system. High Elves worked to make food for everybody else, and they gave it out freely. They did, in fact, have a trade system, but the trade was based more on physical offering rather than a barter or a trade. They would offer something supportive. It could be something as simple as kind words or something as important as physical exchange. Dancing around the subject. But they did have a society built around pleasure and happiness, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. If you're making somebody else's life happier, then you're doing your job. It wasn't until humans and gnomes came to visit them when boats were invented that they really found out, oh, most other races don't live like that. Most other races don't just focus purely on happiness. They have a trade system, they have money, they have economics, and they have politics. Well, politics were not very... You couldn't negotiate or debate before the system sort of changed to be more like what humans and what other races know as politics or as debate. But when that did happen, there were more rules put in place, more covering, as it were. A lot of high elf cities were like party towns, full of bars, brothels, drinking establishments, places that brought people joy. Open use of recreational drugs and recreational enjoyment that just was fun. They would never condone or use any of the substances or activities that were physically harmful or that could cause immense harm. They were always, the entirety of the society was based around what they knew was safe and good. as things sort of changed and developed, certain high elves definitely strayed away from that. They didn't find it as fulfilling as certain other activities, mainly like exploring, going out, seeing the rest of the world, using your life for something other than just happiness. Life being more about other things. Getting happiness from one source is not the way to do it. They felt that happiness could be brought from a million other things, and they wanted to find out what those things were. This led to the first subrace of elves, which is the Wood Elves, and I'll talk about them later. But before the Wood Elves came High Elf explorers that went out and settled other cities that they refused to grow. This is distinctly different, and this is important because certain High Elves went out to make other big cities because they wanted to establish their own rules. They wanted to go back to their roots and more to what High Elf society was about before human and elf, or human and gnome influence started changing it. Especially when dwarves got involved, because dwarves were very much against what elves were about. But we'll get into that. But High Elf cities got established, and then in the year 10,000, the main High Elf capital undertook a cataclysm, which destroyed it entirely. There were no High Elves left in the capital, and no High Elves went back to reclaim it because it was dead land and could not be reclaimed. As of that event, a lot of High Elf culture has shifted in the past 3,000 years of Dadoran. High Elf culture is definitely not what it was even after humans and gnomes got a hold of it and started changing things up. 10,000 years of development gone does shift the culture and does shift the history of a culture when you don't have that as a backbone anymore. But that subject gets more talked about and explained in the books. In fact, very specifically talked about in the Phantom Soul Assassin, which, as a closer, is available on Wattpad for free right now for you to read and learn a little bit more about the history of elves and elvish society 10,000 years ago by seeing three elves, 2 Wood Elves, and a High Elf actually go through it all and see what happened. Along with that, if you guys like this, leave a like to let me know that you want to see more videos about the races, species, cultures, and all that of Dadoran, and I'll do my best. For now, farewell adventurers, welcome to Dadoran, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about the High Elves. Tune in next time to hear about the Wood Elves.